Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to another edition of This Week with Mallory. Really pleased. Originally, we were going to have to do a pre recorded version of this due to a scheduling conflict, but that conflict resolved itself. So, able to be here live this week. Slight change of scenery coming at you this week from my office in Lansing, which is not usually where I am on a Friday, but really glad to be here. So, first of all, want to jump in right away. It is hard to believe that it is, what day is today? December 10th already, December 10th of 2021. We're coming up on the holidays fast and furiously. I don't know about all of you, but I am excited to get back to see my family this year. Much of my family, at least my mom, lives outside of Philly over back towards the East Coast. And we didn't get together last year because before vaccines, it just wasn't safe to travel. I was extremely pregnant last year, so we stayed put. It was a quiet year, but really excited to get back to visit family and want to do so safely. So, especially with the Omicron variant spreading, and you've heard medical professionals, public health officials announcing this, but want to encourage, for those who may not be aware, booster eligibility has expanded a couple of weeks ago and is now recommended for everybody 18 and up. So if you're 18 and over and you have received previous vaccines, regardless of which one, J&J, Pfizer, or Moderna, you are eligible to receive your booster shot. So go ahead and make an appointment. You can go find appointments at oaklandcountyvaccine.com or through CVS, Walgreens, Rite Aid, Meijer, Costco. I am scheduled to get my booster this afternoon at CVS and are looking forward to it. So, obviously this is just another defense tool that we have in our arsenal, but I do want to share some news because I was one of them who had a breakthrough COVID case, and I think we've kind of heard rumblings of people who are rightfully frustrated 2 years into this pandemic, that we're still here, that we're still hearing about new variants spreading and hearing about breakthrough cases. But these are, I think, really helpful graphics that have come out of Beaumont here in our district, Spectrum on the west side of the state, and Michigan Medicine, the University of Michigan, where overwhelmingly, even with Delta, Omicron, new variants, our hospitals are currently completely at capacity again. Hospitals on the west side of the state have called in federal support, additional staff to help with the capacity. University of Michigan Medicine announced just this week that they are canceling what they are considering non-urgent procedures, which is kind of a misnomer because I know a lot of people had been putting off medical care during last year, and many of these procedures are necessary, but it's just too dangerous right now, and hospitals are completely at capacity. So overwhelmingly, wanted to share these three graphics where you can see the trends are the same here at Beaumont. As of the most recent numbers, this was out in their newsletter today, actually, there are 635 COVID-19 patients in the hospital. 484 of them are vaccinated. 151 are fully vaccinated. So still an overwhelming percentage of those who are hospitalized for COVID-19 are unvaccinated. We know that vaccines increase your likelihood significantly of staying out of the hospital should you become infected with COVID-19, and that if you do get infected, you are much more likely to have mild symptoms and head towards recovery, like I did a few weeks ago. In Beaumont, there are in the ICU, 54 unvaccinated, 20 vaccinated and on a ventilator, 40 are unvaccinated, and 11 are vaccinated. So this is all about improving your odds. It's the same at Spectrum. Spectrum, 86% of those hospitalized for COVID-19 are unvaccinated. And the University of Michigan, all of those who are on ventilators are unvaccinated. So get your booster, be safe these holidays, protect yourself, your loved ones, especially those if your family are like mine, who either have those who can't get vaccinated or are immunocompromised. We want to protect each other so that we can gather again next year. All right, I'm going to move into our update from the Capitol this week. It was a really, really hard week last week with the tragedy in Oxford, the Oxford school shooting. And the more we learn about what has happened in Oxford and what is happening since, it is just an absolutely horrific situation. Uh, Prosecutor Karen McDonald made kind of the unprecedented decision to charge the parents with involuntary manslaughter, which, given what we know about their not only allowing their son to have access for a firearm, but actually purchasing it for him, refusing to take him home from school when teachers and counselors suggested that they did. I mean, the facts in this case are egregious, but it has impacted everybody. There are a number of people in our district, in our communities, who either teach at Oxford, know kids at Oxford, have lived in Oxford. I mean, this is hitting really, really close to home. And you may have seen my speech last week, just about this. The Columbine school shooting was 22 years ago. And right off the bat, some of our colleagues here in the legislature said now is not the time to be talking about gun violence and gun safety measures. And that was my challenge back: is if now is not the time, when is the time? Because that is what we're told every time, that now is not the time. It has been 22 years. So this week, some of my colleagues and I held a press conference to introduce a new set of bills, but also to talk about bills that we have been introducing and trying to. Ooh, is that flickering? It's flickering on my end. Let's try this again and see if this works. I may have to read it to you. I don't want to give anybody a seizure who's watching. Let's see if this will work. There we go. Okay. So we held a press conference this week regarding bills that were introduced by my colleagues, Senator Rosemary Bayer and Senator Jeremy Moss, around magazine capacity. We know that in Oxford, for example, the shooter had 15-round capacity. And this new bill would limit magazine capacity to 10 rounds. This is in line with federal recommendations and many other states right now, and it's legislation that has been proven to be effective. We had somebody from the Giffords Center with us yesterday at the press conference who pointed that the organization's founder, Gabby Giffords, who was shot at an event, that the shooter in that instance, who shot Gabby Giffords, was actually reloading the gun when bystanders tackled the shooter. So that right there is an example of kind of those few seconds between reloading a magazine can be the difference between life and death. So this is just one bill, but the graphic that we have here on the left shows many of the other bills that we have been introducing. I am part of the Gun Violence Prevention Caucus here in the legislature. There are similar caucuses around the country. To my knowledge, Michigan is the only state where this caucus is not bipartisan. We've invited our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join us in this caucus, because I think what we all universally agree is that gun ownership is not at odds with gun safety, and that preventing needless gun violence can and should and must be a bipartisan issue. We have existed since 2016. So before I came into office, Representative Robert Wittenberg founded the caucus. And as Jeremy Moss pointed out in a speech this week, they founded the caucus in 2016. And just a few days later was the Pulse nightclub shooting. And so these are bills that we have introduced, sometimes many, many years and sessions in repeat of themselves, and they've never even gotten a hearing. So this idea that bills are being introduced in kind of a panicked response to what's happening or what has happened in Oxford is, first of all, a complete lie. We have been trying for years to pass legislation to address the issue of gun violence, including just a number of bills. I introduced red flag laws in 2019, otherwise known as extreme risk protection order legislation, which we actually crafted in partnership with Sheriff Bouchard out of Oakland County, to make sure that we were protecting due process, that we have very steep penalties for false reporting. These bills and bills like it around the country allow for a judge and law enforcement to temporarily confiscate firearms from somebody who is deemed an immediate risk to themselves or others. And that's often used, when people are sending out a cry for help, when somebody is going through anxiety, depression, when they've made known attempts to consider harming themselves. That is where laws like these can be extremely powerful. Or, potentially even in the case of this shooting, where, I think this young man was exhibiting very clear signs of struggling, of going through something, literally, drawing, asking for help. And while the firearm it was his parents, could this have been something that would have given law enforcement or the school another tool to make sure that in the home that gun was secured and in a safe or locked or away from somebody who needed help, not a firearm? Other bills that are in the package of bills that we've introduced, or the many bills we've introduced, Senate Bill 678, 679, to prohibit abusers convicted of misdemeanor domestic violence from possessing a gun for 8 years. This is often where we see gun violence injury fatalities is in cases of domestic violence. Gun violence prevention funding, to create a gun violence prevention program specifically for Ingham County. It's a small amount of dollars. Safe storage. We've been talking about this a lot over the past week, requiring that gun owners, if you have a minor in the household, that you secure your firearm at home to prevent minors from accessing that firearm. Universal background checks on all guns, restoring local control to allow local governments to prohibit guns on property that they own or lease, and prohibiting guns here in the Michigan Capitol, which we saw on full display on April 30th of 2020. So a lot we're working on, certainly more to come. Senator Shirkey, who is the Senate Majority Leader here, had promised us actually over 2 years ago now that we would get a hearing on our red flag bills. That didn't happen. COVID happened. But he has reasserted, and his spokesperson has reasserted as well, that he still intends to give us a hearing on those bills. And Senator Baer and I will be shortly reintroducing those bills so that they are kind of live bills here in this term. So we've heard from a lot of you. Thank you to everybody who has contacted us. I spoke to an Oxford dad, and it was heartbreaking. And I've been talking to a lot of people since who are just really trying to wrap their arms around what we can all do to make sure that this doesn't happen again and again and again. So more to come. We'll keep working on this and let you know how you can be a part of the solution as well if you do want to help. And I also want to give a huge shout out to anybody who's reached out to us. And we've got a lot of people who have said, I am a gun owner. I'm a lifelong Republican. I support these common sense measures to protect people against gun violence, because these things are not at odds. And I really, really appreciate that. And I would encourage anybody, if this is where you are, contact your senator and representative and say, hey, I am in support of preventing gun violence. This has to be a bipartisan effort, and we can and should do this together. All right. Moving on to other things that we did this week in the legislature. You may have seen the news this morning that GM just announced, and it was out in the Wall Street Journal first, $3.5 billion that they will be investing here in Michigan, additionally, to build new EV vehicles and a new battery plant, which is great news. And here in both the Senate and the House, we worked together on an economic development tool to assist the state in providing funding to prepare sites for projects like this. In the wake of the Ford news of Ford going down to the South, one of the things that we heard was that sites, for large facilities like this were kind of ready and prepared in the South. Michigan has no shortage of land, but a lot of that is what kind of physical infrastructure needs to go in place to prep these sites, utilities, energy, water, all of the things that kind of go to create a site that is ready for this type of investment. That is an investment that will be made. Now, many of you may be saying, Mallory, how could you have supported this? You've been pretty critical of this kind of economic development. And you're right. So I look at where we are in the state right now, and I said this on the floor yesterday. We are in a unique position because we have a surplus of dollars that we did not have previously, along with federal dollars. So we're in a unique position where we have more funding to kind of use. And I think that we have to view what we passed here in the legislature as a first step. There has to be a stopgap to make sure that we are keeping jobs here in our state, especially around our signature industry. But I have assurances from many in the business community and the businesses themselves, and along with the MEDC, the administration, that this must only be a first step. We have to be very judicious with how much money we put into these things, because I was told by a lobbyist probably almost 3 years ago now, um, who came into my office and said to me, Senator, we need these incentives because we don't have the talent here in Michigan. And I want to make sure that we as a state are not in a place where we are trying to incentivize our way out of shortcomings that we have as a state. We are a rapidly aging state. There are fewer and fewer younger working age people who are staying in the state, moving to the state. And those that are, we need to make sure that people have some kind of a post-secondary degree, certificate, apprentice training program, so that everybody's ready for the jobs, particularly in the space that are going to require a new skill set. I want to get to a place where we don't have to offer incentives here in the state of Michigan. I want to get to a place where companies are clamoring to move here, expand here, do business here because of our communities, because it's a great place to live, because we have robust regional transit in areas where it makes sense, which is something that Amazon told us 4 years ago now when we were exploring Amazon HQ2, is that we didn't have transit in Metro Detroit. And that, it is impossible for companies not to do business here. I know those are long-term structural things we need to address, but I have commitments from people that we will work on those. So I was proud to be a part of this, continue to be at the table, because this is an important first step to keep investment here. And now we've got to look at what's next, so that we do not have to offer incentives like this in the future, and that we continue to invest in ourselves, in our people, and all of the things that make Michigan a wonderful place to live. Okay. Other bills of interest that we worked on in the Senate this week. Senate Bill 759 was introduced by Senator Vanderwall, would allow healthcare professionals who are licensed in another state to provide care to patients here in Michigan without having to obtain a Michigan license, provided that their outstate license is in good standing. And it would only be allowable during a staffing shortage caused by a pandemic. As declared by the director of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. And that is very relevant right now because we have staffing shortages at many of our hospitals who are full of COVID-19 patients. And as I mentioned earlier, canceling other procedures. So that was bipartisan and in an effort to support folks from out of state who do want to come in, making sure that they are licensed professionals, but eliminating a hurdle to be able to assist in this urgent time. Additionally, there was some movement around the bottle bills. House Bills 4780 through 4783 create a fund to address bottle returnable fraud, which, if anybody is interested, we can do a whole kind of special edition of our live stream to go into. But effectively, it's to create a fraud division to help tamp down on people who are gaming the bottle return system, which is a thing that happens and really negatively impacts particularly some of our smaller retailers. So that is a piece of that. There's a lot more to be done on the bottle bill. A number of my colleagues, including Senator McCann and Senator Moss, have been working to expand the bottle bill, because right now, you can return a bottle of beer, but maybe not a bottle of cider or a bottle of water. So if we're really trying to encourage recycling here in the state of Michigan, we've got to expand and make it every bottle that you are able to return. Another set of House bills supports the creation of, and it's not a new bill, but supports the recreation of a historically Black college university right here in Michigan, in Detroit. The Lewis College of Business was originally founded as a secretarial school for Black women. The school moved to Detroit in 1939 and operated as a business school for men and women until 2013. But the board is still in existence. The naming of the school is still in existence. And What is really, really exciting is there is now a private business person who's come in, a sneaker designer, which is super cool, who is revitalizing this school and is going to relaunch this school right here in Detroit as the Pencil Lewis College of Business and Design, with a heavy focus on apparel product design, bringing in a ton of investment from Adidas, Nike, Timberland, which is it's awesome. And it's exciting that it's here in Detroit. And if you hear me like geeking out about it, it's because this is my degree. I got my degree in industrial design. This school will partner with CCS right here in Detroit. And these bills would allow this school to retain its designation as an HCBU, which has benefits federally in terms of financing resources, and it will ensure that all of the students will be able to attend this college with free tuition, which is awesome. So we're excited to support these bills and can't wait to see what the school does here when it reopens. House Bill 5072 amends the Public Health Code to clarify calculation of dosage units distributed by a pharmacist that would trigger licensure as a wholesale distributor broker. This is very wonky kind of inside pharmacy stuff that would be very kind of intricate, but really it's the type of my goodness, Friday. This type of facilitation largely helps smaller independent pharmacies with less purchasing power than bigger retail pharmacies. So we want to make sure as we kind of have larger and larger chain entities like Walgreens, CVS, who have large purchasing power just because of their size, that we are giving our smaller, our homegrown Michigan businesses, our pharmacies, the ability to stay in the game, to compete in terms of buying power and purchasing power. And then this one, which is, an interesting problem that I hadn't even thought of, that these are bills that I love, which is somebody brings an issue. It's something that I didn't even realize was an issue, and we've come up with a solution here. So right now, you may be aware there is a worker shortage in a lot of industries, but one that's really critical is a shortage of school bus drivers, which, as we are talking about how we are making sure kids go back to school, their parents can go back to work, we've got to make sure the kids can get to school. So under current law, if a school bus driver does not meet federal physical qualifications due to being insulin dependent, they're currently not allowed to be school bus drivers. So this new bill would allow an individual who falls under that category to attain a state waiver that they can be exempt from being prohibited if they're evaluated by their physician and pass a medical examination by a state-approved doctor. So this is a great way just to eliminate a hurdle for somebody that is totally capable of doing the job, and was something that we passed with pretty bipartisan, unanimous support. Almost unanimous, I think. All right, so getting into good news, and then we will open it up for Q&A. So let me get back to sharing my screen. Fantastic. There we go. All right. First up in good news this week, Meadowbrook Hall is celebrating 50 years of its holiday walk. It's absolutely beautiful if you've never been. The Director of External Relations, Shannon Oberski, shares some of the histories of the hall, and I am now going to share them with you. Back in 1971, when Meadowbrook Hall opened, it was open just during the weekends. The holiday walk was a different format where local florists would decorate the rooms and guests would go through and tour the house. Through the years, as interest expanded, we changed the event to include holiday lighting and decor throughout the entirety of the house. And now we're open for a month versus just a couple of weekends. So it's a great opportunity to go check out Meadowbrook Hall, see some really, really beautiful holiday decorations. The holiday walk is now a self-guided indoor tour of 3 floors of historic Meadowbrook Hall, filled with holiday sights and decorations. Guests can experience the wonder of more than 50 trees. 50. I have a hard enough time getting and decorating one for my house. So 50 trees that you can go experience. A 10-foot tall poinsettia tree created by 150 live poinsettias. Don't bring your dog around the poinsettia tree. And hundreds of feet of garland and thousands of lights. Winter Wonder Lights runs from 5:30 to 10 p.m. through December 30th at Meadowbrook Hall. So go check it out. Very exciting. Next up, Oakland University students groups will help deliver Christmas to 2 area families. 2 area families are set to have a nicer Christmas than they might have expected, due in large part to the Oakland University student group interested in adopting these families for the holidays. Last weekend, the Meds Peds interest group delivered about $1,500 in gifts to two separate families through the Volunteers of America Adopt a Family program. They aim to make Christmas wishes come true for families in need. Way to go, students. It's going to be, this is something that families are going to remember for the rest of their lives. So that's awesome. Finally, in our good news this week, Oak's Jingle and Light Parade returns. Downtown Royal Oak will sparkle with holiday cheer during the Royal Oak Jingle taking place Saturday, December 11th. The festivities this year include a cookie crawl. I'm excited about that. We could end there and I would absolutely be at this event. Light holiday parade and winter market. Visitors can also see reindeer, enjoy live entertainment, get photos with Santa and Mrs. Claus, and more. The festival kicks off with the popular cookie crawl, as you can see by my reaction. I am very excited about that. From 1 to 6 p.m. on Saturday, December 11th. And it's hosted by Genesis Credit Union. Thank you for the support. And it will be on Main Street between Lincoln and 11, beginning at 7 p.m. So that takes care of good news for this week. So I am going to go ahead, not from the office this week. We've switched up a little bit, but Liz, our Director of Constituent Services, is here to take any questions. So this is the live Q&A portion. So for anybody who's new or needs a reminder, for live Q&A, please state your full name if that is not obvious via your username, because we do stream this on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Let us know what city you live in, and then go ahead and fire away with your questions.
Yeah, I decided to come in from home just to avoid any echoes from our two offices. So we have one question from Hydera on, apologies if I did not pronounce that correctly, on YouTube. And I feel like you have already answered this or answered this question, but if someone's new tuning in, I'll ask it right now. They would like to know your stance on the rumors of Michigan Dems asking for smaller magazines in the wake of Oxford.
Yeah, so I was at the press conference, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, in support of these bills, and we have hard data to back up that the time between changing magazines can and has been the difference between life and death. The bill, as it's written, would not require anybody who currently possesses a larger magazine to turn them in. So nobody's coming to get them. But, in talking to a lot of people in the gun owner community, in the hunting community, there is really the large capacity magazines really exist for one purpose, and that is to fire as many shots and cause as much damage as possible very, very quickly. So, I think it's hard pressed to find a reason to own high capacity firearms. Many of the mass shootings that we've seen in recent years have become significantly more deadly and dangerous because of high capacity magazines. But as with all of these bills, we are asking for a hearing. We haven't even gotten the chance to debate them in committee over the many years that we have been introducing them. So I look forward to that debate, but we'd be happy to share resources that show why bills like this are effective at reducing unnecessary injuries and death.
Okay, sorry for the sun. It's just not in a good, opportune place. The second one is from Raya in Troy, I think I saw. Wanted to know, has two questions, tuning in from YouTube. One, do you have a stance on sales tax? They say I would eliminate it because it harms mid/low class families.
General sales tax. So tax reform policy is, a lot of people would probably shy away from this issue. It is one of the most fascinating issues to me and something that I think is hugely important. Every state has a different way that they raise revenue. So fundamentally, I think everybody knows this, all of our taxes go to pay for running the entire state of Michigan. Michigan has approximately a $60 billion budget that is everything from our basic infrastructure, roads, bridges, how we get around, protecting our water, public parks, our health department. All of this is paid for via taxes. I have been incredibly concerned with the shift in tax burden from those who are wealthier and from companies onto the backs of middle and lower class families. That's something that we have seen throughout, a few administrations. Most notably, there was some analysis done in 2018 after Governor Snyder left office in results of kind of the significant tax cuts for businesses here in Michigan, that the tax burden, the percentage of taxes that goes into all of the revenue that we collect in the state, a larger percentage of that based on your income went onto the backs of regular people. And some of that is in sales tax as well, on the items that we buy, paying sales tax on that. I was recently behind one of the bills to eliminate the so-called tampon tax, the tax on feminine hygiene products, and different states eliminate sales tax on items that are deemed necessary. So I am always happy to explore a new tax structure. I have been supportive of introducing a graduated income tax here in Michigan, which is actually what we have on the federal level, so that if you are somebody in a higher tax bracket, that you are paying a fair percentage versus a flat tax rate. Because if you are making less money, if it's a flat tax structure, the percentage, the amount that you are paying relative to your total income is actually significantly higher than those who may make more money. So I totally agree that we need tax reform. I don't know that I could support eliminating a sales tax unless we solve for how are we raising the revenue to support our schools, roads, everything that we need to run the state. But I totally agree with the premise that we've got to have a fairer tax structure to make sure that those who are middle and low income aren't overburdened in terms of the revenue that they are paying into the state versus those who are higher income and companies who do business here.
Okay, and then their second question is, do you have any updates on Paul Wieland?
I do not. So Haley Stevens, this is an issue on the federal level. Paul Wieland is not a constituent of ours. So he does not live in our district. I believe he's a Livonia resident, but I know that he has been held in Russia for years now and was charged with being a spy. So I would follow up with Congresswoman Haley Stevens, and we'll post her contact information because he is her constituent. And I know that she has been working and in communication with the family on trying to get him released.
All right, and then we have a question from Joseph on Facebook, tuning in from Royal Oak. They said they're very concerned about any voter suppression efforts in Michigan and nationwide. What is currently happening?
Yeah, so it's a great question. We had a bill up in the Senate yesterday that on its face seems pretty innocuous, that would require all ballot drop boxes be designed and approved by the Secretary of State here in Lansing. And on its face, you might say, well, that kind of makes sense if we're going to have a drop box. But the reality is many of our communities already use and have designed ballot drop boxes, have had them out. I know Royal Oak, Birmingham, Rochester Hills has people out kind of manning them, especially during collection days to come in. So that would be a huge burden on our communities to have to get rid of and buy new drop boxes. So we on the Democratic side unanimously voted against that bill. But a few things are happening. So there is a 39 bill package that was introduced by the Senate GOP around supposedly securing elections. However, as the Senate Oversight Committee has proven in a report, and we have seen over 250 audits at this point, there was no widespread fraud at all in the 2020 election. Our elections are overwhelmingly secure, and I share your concern that all of these efforts are kind of being sold falsely, and they just make it harder for people to vote. So those bills are moving. The reality here in the legislature is that the governor will almost certainly veto every single one of these bills. However, there is a ballot initiative that is running right now where a group is taking a few of these bills and has put them into a petition initiative, and they are now collecting signatures and they may approach you. So this is something that's great. When it comes to somebody coming up to you with a clipboard and a petition asking you to sign it, number one, always, always, always read it. If you don't have the time to read it, I know a lot of times people stand like outside of Kroger, outside of the post office or farmers markets and ask you to sign something. Don't sign it if you don't have time to read it, because they may say something like, hey, do you support making our elections more secure here in Michigan? And you might think, yeah, of course I do, and sign it. And it may be something that you may not actually support that may make it harder to vote. So the current status of that is if they do collect enough signatures, it could potentially come in front of the legislature. There's a loophole in Michigan law that allows the legislature to adopt and amend legislation or adopt it. So when people run a ballot initiative, the idea is you collect enough signatures and it should put something on the ballot to be voted on by all of the residents of the state of Michigan. However, the legislature has the first opportunity to adopt that petition instead of sending it to a ballot. So the petition comes to the legislature first. The legislature may decide to adopt it into law. They are banking on the fact that right now there is a Republican majority in both the House and the Senate that have supported these bills. If that is the case, if the legislature adopts this petition, the governor cannot veto it. So that has been something I think has pointed to a hole, regardless of what side of the aisle you are on, because it sets up a reality where about 4% of the population, based on signatures, can pass something into law that an overwhelming majority of actual residents and voters don't support.
Okay, and then we have a couple more questions. Hydera has another question, and I'm not saying the specific question, so maybe there's a lag in ours. But they mentioned talking about how some high school students are not prepared for university or higher colleges or universities or bigger, like Michigan State, Michigan, and wanted to know about community college requirements for free college.
Yeah, so there's so many things. So there are kind of two aspects of economic development that I'm really working on. Number one is making sure that the right businesses are here in Michigan. But that second piece is the workforce development piece. And you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that high schools are preparing people to go to college or community college. And we need to make sure that higher education or a post-secondary degree, certificate, apprentice program is accessible and available to everybody, and addressing some gaps if people don't feel prepared for that. So there isn't one big answer yet right now, but there's a couple of programs out there currently that you might want to look into. The Michigan Reconnect program is a program where, let's say you started a community college program, but you didn't finish it for whatever reason. You got busy, you needed financial help and couldn't get it, you needed to go start a job, you had a family, all kinds of reasons where people don't finish their degree or certificate. You can apply for free tuition to go back and finish that certificate. But I also serve on the state's workforce development task force council commission, and this is going to be my focus going into next year, which is what do we need in the state of Michigan to make sure our goal as a state is that 60% of all residents have a post-secondary degree, certificate, apprentice program, because that's the reality of what we all need to be able to compete for and get good jobs, not just a minimum wage job, a good job that you're going to be passionate about and want to stay in and is going to support you and have good benefits. So more to come, but that is a lot of my focus, and we'd be happy to share, pull together some resources. And this is a good plug. I'm going to drop a caption right now because sometimes I put Liz on the spot and I'm like, send this information, but we may not have it offhand. So I'm going to put it here on the caption at the bottom there. If you haven't already, sign up for our email newsletter. It's not spam. This isn't campaign side stuff. I'm not going to ask you for fundraising or money. It is from our office. It's official information. And that's where, it comes into your inbox once every couple of weeks or so. And it will have information like this. If you need to find information on education, training programs, all that kind of stuff, we will share that with you. And there's going to be a lot more on that to come as we go into next year, especially with my work on the state council and my focus on economic development and worker support, people support.
All right, and then Ria on YouTube again has another question. If the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, what would happen here?
So if the Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, which based on early hearings at the Supreme Court, it does sound like they are willing to do. Now, just for historical perspective, oftentimes when you kind of hear the Supreme Court meeting, there's a long time between kind of initial testimony in the Supreme Court and final opinion, and they have changed their minds historically. But I think the writing is on the wall right now that this current Supreme Court on the federal level is looking for a reason to overturn Roe v. Wade. If that happens, then Michigan immediately goes back to the law that's currently on the books. It is a 1931 law that completely outlaws all abortion, but not only all abortion, also potentially contraceptives, education about contraceptives. I mean, you think about a law that was written in 1931, it's particularly archaic. So, myself and a number of other colleagues have introduced a package of bills called the Reproductive Health Act. And it includes, number one, repealing that 1931 law and all the associated laws, and introducing a new law which would codify abortion access into law here in the state of Michigan. I've talked to a lot of people about this for the past few years, and I think what we fundamentally know is that outlawing abortion doesn't stop abortions, it just makes it incredibly dangerous for women, families, those seeking it. I was reading a book on kind of the history of reproductive rights and reproductive health in this country. And, I think a lot of us are much too young. We weren't alive, but Lysol used to be sold as a means to abortion. It was sold and advertised in magazines for women to inject into themselves Lysol, this product, to force abortion or contraceptive. That is the reality that we need to avoid. We need women to have rights over our own bodies. We know what reduces the number of abortions, and that's access to contraceptives and safe sex ed. But we also know that there are realities in life. I had a couple that I brought here to Lansing who, shared a heartbreaking story about a pregnancy they wanted to have, got married, got pregnant, were really excited, and found out after their 20-week scan of a horrific fetal abnormality, that if they had survived to term, if they had been born, likely would not have survived. But if it did, it probably would have only been for a few days and would have suffered tremendously, and they couldn't in good conscience bring a life into the world only for them to suffer. So they needed to pursue a late term abortion. And they talked about how hard that was, even with the laws that we currently have on the books. And McCall's husband, Jordan, talked about this very candidly, saying, in his mind, before this happened, he never thought that they were in the position to have an abortion. He thought they needed emergency medical care. So I think talking very candidly about what abortion actually is and does, and the rates of it, and how we can make sure that women and families are safe and that your decisions are left between you and your doctor are essential. But the reality is, if Roe goes, then abortion is immediately illegal here in the state of Michigan due to a trigger law.
All right. Well, those are the last of the questions. We had some people share some stuff that they are, either have interest in or are concerned about. And I can share those as well if you think. Yeah, I'll share the one from Mark on Facebook. They said, as price vehicles increase, I'm concerned that registration of these vehicles as they depreciate status the same as new, making used vehicles less affordable.
Oh, yeah, that is a huge issue right now, that the used vehicle market is skyrocketing at the moment, versus new vehicle prices are up, but not up nearly at the rate of used cars. So I know anybody looking for a used car right now is having a really hard time. That is going to be solved when we address the chip shortage. New vehicles need hundreds, if not thousands, depending on where we get to, semiconductors, little chips, because of all of the complicated features that are in cars these days. I know the governor, those of us working on economic development, Gina Raimondo, who is the federal secretary of commerce, are looking at, can we actually manufacture more of these chips here domestically, potentially here in Michigan? Because once that's solved, then you're addressing the bottleneck of fewer new cars coming onto the market. Once that's solved, then the used car prices should go back down to normal levels. So more to come on that, but really bringing back some of that manufacturing so we can address that chip shortage is going to be the huge step to eliminating that problem. But I don't envy you if you're looking for a used car right now.
Yeah. We actually, as I said, we didn't have any more questions. We had two more questions come in, so I'll ask those two and then let you wrap up because I know we're closing to the end. Um, Melly on Facebook, Mel, I apologize. How likely is that reproductive rights laws get passed in the current legislature? I wanted to know if there's anything that would change.
Melly, the reality in the current legislature is unlikely, almost a near zero possibility. And I really, my staff knows this, anybody who knows me, I hate to get very partisan about things. I like to think that most issues are nonpartisan or bipartisan and we can work together on a compromise. But the sad reality is it will not move in this current legislature. And the only way we get reproductive health care codified into law is by changing the legislature. That's the reality. So there are going to be elections next year. Pay attention to that and get involved because that is the reality. These bills will not move in the current legislature. If Roe goes, we are back to the 1931 law.
All right. And then our last question
A
is
real
from Mark
downer.
Katz. Sorry, I interrupted. Our last question is from Mark Katz from Berkeley, who's on the Oakland Schools of Board of Education. They ask, with the increasing shortages of substitute teachers across the state, is there any movement on the legislation to reduce the number of credit hours that one needs to be able to substitute?
Hi, Mark. First of all, thank you for all of your work for Berkeley and serving on a board of ed. That's not an easy job right now. I know that. I will have to check into that. I'm not sure. We have a very few number of session days left, and I don't serve on the education policy committee, so I'm not trying to deflect, but we will. If you want to share your email address or shoot us an email about it, we can find out the status of that bill for you and let you know where that is in the process.
Okay.
Cool. Well, Liz, if we want to end on a more positive note, are you doing anything holiday themed this weekend?
I am. I'm doing a belated and I guess slash early um, Friendsgiving tomorrow. So, and
Ooh,
I'm now 2 weeks out of my booster, so I'm grateful for that added protection.
awesome. That's probably a little better than me because I'm getting my booster this afternoon. So I'm planning just in case. I mean, everybody reacts differently. I had absolutely no side effects whatsoever to the initial vaccines, but I've heard the booster might be a little bit of a downtime. So
Yeah,
planning for that. Yeah, and then I'm moving a whole mile, so I'm planning to box stuff up and get ready to move. It's
just
never fun. Moving is never fun. It doesn't matter if you're moving across the country or down the street, but I'm
yeah,
sure.
my first two shots were completely fine. My third one got me pretty good, so I hope yours is a little bit different than that.
I hope so too. All right, Liz, we'll let you go. And all right, great questions this week. Thank you everybody for watching. We really love doing this. So if this is something that you have enjoyed and you think it's a good way to engage, please tell your friends, please share it. We try to do it almost every single week. We do it every week that the Senate is in session just to make sure we have things to talk to you about. But like I said, it's on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Follow our Facebook page for updates on times. Otherwise, you can go back on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and watch every single episode of these if you want to. And then always email us if you have any questions that you're not able to make live, if you want to know things. And we hope you have a very safe weekend. Get that holiday shopping in if you haven't already. And we will see you next time.